Today on the show, I speak with Montreal-based real estate entrepreneur Mike Lambert. Now, Mike was previously an accomplished international banker with large banks in Europe, the Asia Pacific, and North America. He's generated hundreds of billions of dollars in business across the world for these banks. Today, he's a full-time with international real estate and has been acquiring properties in Canada, Latin America, and Europe. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did learning from him. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time today in your busy schedule to join the show. I know you have a very tight, you travel a lot, and it's been, you and I have been going back and forth trying to set this up. I'm very excited to jump into this call with you. So thank you, first of all, for taking the time out of your schedule to jump on this with me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for the invitation. I am that kind of people. I like to talk about, I'm passionate about what I'm doing, so I don't mind talking about it. So hopefully it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Absolutely. And I think, you've had obviously this remarkable journey, and where I want to go is the beginning, like how you started, your career in this international banking, like how that kicked off and sort of what experiences set you on the path to becoming this successful international real estate entrepreneur. And maybe you can discuss any pivotal moments or opportunities that may have shaped your career early on in your path.
So basically, as you might hear or not, I was born and bred in Belgium. There were no entrepreneurs in my family or in my, immediate circle. So basically, I thought life was about, studying, getting a job and retiring, right? So that's how I got started. So I studied economics and management, and also I was very good with figures. So when I graduated, it was kind of natural to go into banking, and it paid well. So that helped too. All my friends and people who knew me, people from university, were always telling me, Belgium is a bit too small of a country for you. You should probably go somewhere else. And actually, I always loved, traveling and experiencing other cultures. So I got the opportunity to join the International Management Development Program of the biggest Dutch bank at the time, ABN AMRO, who had a subsidiary in my hometown. And so basically the deal was, so they hired me locally, and then they sent me to the head office in Amsterdam, in Netherlands, to do some training for a few months. Then I had to come back to Belgium to make them some money, or to work for them a little bit, and then they would release me into the bank's international network, which was very extensive. So there would be a lot of opportunities. So I did that. Then when I was in Amsterdam, I did an assignment in the credit department. And I had to give advice on a very complex loan structure. And because of the amounts involved, it had to go up to the board of directors. So when the committee was done, actually, they came back to me and they said, oh, by the way, you got the congratulations from the board of directors for the work that you did for that file. And you should know they give that very rarely, even to very experienced people. So naturally, when I got back to Belgium, they told me, okay, you're going to go to the credit department. so that's basically where I started. And basically, that was very interesting because I learned a lot about all sorts of businesses and industries, but mostly it made me aware of all the possible risks that you could get in any transaction. So in a way, it made me a bit risk averse, if you want to, or at least, I realized how important risks are. And so that was something that has never left me, I should say. As I was there, basically, I was giving advice to the heads of the Belgian subsidiary in the committee. credit committee about whether we should do deals or not. And we had a special unit in the bank that was in international trade finance, and they were actually doing international business. And what they were doing was quite complex and a bit risky. And so they constantly had issues getting their deals approved. So at some point, the head of the department had a good idea to poach me so that I would be the one preparing their credit files to get them approved by my ex-colleagues, basically. And because I understood that business, etc., so I did that, and that went fairly well. And then when that was done, I wasn't needed for that. So basically, my boss decided, okay, you should do business development with me. So then I switched more to the business development area. And then the bank decided to actually regroup different units that were scattered across the world and bring them to the head office. So I had to go back to Amsterdam, but from there, actually, because we were the best performers, so basically we became the center of that whole unit, and we got an international mandate. So from then on, basically, I spent a few years traveling and doing deals in very exotic parts of the world, from Brazil to Turkey to Asia, so some in Africa. But these were complex deals, and they were actually very difficult to get approved. So I learned to do whatever it takes to get things done, which is not very usual in banks. So it was pretty entrepreneurial for a bank. So that's another thing that I learned in my career that would help me later. And then, believe it or not, I had a fantastic situation. I left everything because I decided, I had been to Australia on a holiday a few years before, and I loved it. And I said, I'm going to move there. So I left everything, and then I went there, and I got myself a job at the Japanese bank, of all places, there. So I had a double culture shock, like being in a foreign country on the other side of the world, and then working from Japanese people, which is quite different, I should say. So that was a huge school for me to learn about working and actually living and working with people from different cultures, different languages, different approaches. So I loved Australia, but after a few years, it was the problem. The only thing I didn't like, it was too far for people to come and visit me. So I lost sight of pretty much everybody. And after a few years, I thought, I need to get closer. And I didn't necessarily want to go back to Europe. So I decided, let's give North America a try. And that was at the time of the financial crisis. So I figured I'll never get a job in the US bank. And thankfully, Canada has the strongest banking system in the world. And I spoke French, and I love Montreal, which is a mix of French and English. And so I moved there. I got myself actually a job there, and that was also a very interesting experience because the culture was very collegial, I should say, and when I was especially when I was at ABN AMRO, and we were doing so well that I could do whatever I wanted, and if somebody was not happy with what I was doing, a colleague, basically my boss told them to shut up. I shouldn't say that.
You had autonomy.
Yeah. Basically they said, whenever you can you can perform as him, you can talk. Mm-hmm. So, okay, that was very helpful to me at the time. But the thing is, then when I got in another situation where I didn't have that kind of protection, I realized that, my idea of a job is I get paid to do a job, make money for the bank, and that's the main thing, and that's it. And I wasn't paying any attention to corporate politics and all this stuff and being popular with colleagues. And that didn't work there that well. So actually I have the chance. I had a boss there. At the first, I thought he didn't like me, but actually, it's not that. He had decided he wanted to mentor me into becoming that perfect employee who goes along with everybody, etc. So I worked a lot on my face, and that's where I realized, what business work. It's not a one-man show. It's not about me. It's about the team. It's about working with other people. It's about giving credit to others. It's about, having relationship with others, go to lunch with them, and all that stuff. In each of these jobs, I learned the things that ended up helping me a lot in what I did afterwards in real estate.
Right. So that's obviously a very, very broad reach. I mean, gosh, you've been all over the world. I mean, I can't imagine just adjusting to, like you said, the cultures, the way of life it is in these different places. And it's funny how you said you get there and you start working in Australia with the Japanese bank, so you're constantly colliding with these different countries and cultures and stuff. And what in this sort of world or in the transitions you were making from place to place sparked your interest in this real estate, the world of real estate and investing?
Well, there's two things. What happened is I really enjoyed my banking career, and I was actually very lucky to do things that I love, and I was working with great professionals. But at some point there was one of these restructurings within the bank, and I realized at that time that even making lots of money for your employer makes you safer, but it was no guarantee of success or survival. So I decided to take an extended sabbatical in order to create a kind of a rainy day pension fund for myself, just in case, right?
Sure.
And I heard about real estate as a path to becoming financially independent, like many people. So I started to, consider doing that. Then already at the time, here in Canada, real estate was already very expensive. And as a banker, I understood that the whole model was based on cheap debt. And what we're learning today, I was a bit in advance. When the cheap debt is gone, it's not the same anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So because of the knowledge and relationships I had developed, I actually realized there were opportunities in other countries that very few people had access to, for which I had the knowledge and the connection to get involved, also with very little competition. So that was, one way I got to that idea. The other way, like you said, I consider myself a citizen of the world. So not only I've lived and worked on several continents, I have 3 passports. Depending on how you count, I speak up to 5 languages. On top of that, I have another ethnicity that is not even one of my nationalities. So, and all this travel and this interacting with people from different cultures gave me a certain frame of mind whereby, I can't just look at what's happening in just where I am. To me, the world is the playground. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. So I put 2 and 2 together. I said something I like doing. I love traveling. I love meeting all sorts of people. And plus, I felt I have an advantage in doing the real estate overseas rather than at home.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny because I was in Europe this summer in June, and one of the striking things to me was I would go anywhere. Like Rome, you're at the Colosseum, and there's people selling maps and bottles, whatever, and they speak 4 languages, like it's nothing. Like it's not even like here in America, the United States, I should say. I know we're both North America, but in the U.S., you'd put on your resume, "Oh, I'm bilingual," and that is typically a very attractive to employers. Whereas in Europe and other countries, that's just the way of life. Like 3, 4 languages is just. That's it. That's all you know. You have to kind of just be trilingual at the very least, I feel.
I mean, it's not the majority. I mean, in my case, the thing is, in Belgium, I'm originally French speaking. We were forced to learn Dutch from the youngest age at school. And then, of course, you need English as the international language. So that's why in Belgium, especially, you have a lot of that speak those three. And then, we had courses. So I chose also some extra at school. But it's not,
Yeah.
But yes, people generally speak more languages. They have to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a place we haven't really discussed yet that seems to hold a special place in what I've read about you and your real estate ventures is Mexico. And I was curious about like your, again, being in all these different, countries and continents, what sort of like led you to Mexico on your focus? Obviously, you've done Canada, Latin America, Europe, but those early experiences in Mexico, like how did you was the focus there just because your mindset, like you said, citizen of the world kind of mentality, and that's just where you felt like more comfortable?
Well, that it was actually, but first of all, it's a country I had been to several times because actually, with Mexico, I go back like, I don't know, like 20 years or something, because when I used to actually do some business there at the beginning of my banking career, as soon as I moved to Amsterdam. So I was already familiar with it. I liked it. I liked the culture, the people, and also not being based in Montreal. If you want to do something overseas, well, obviously you have the US that's just, very close by. But of course, I had no advantage being in the US. Americans are experts in real estate. So I went the next country, right?
Yeah.
Where basically I saw opportunities, and there wasn't all that real estate culture, or so there were a lot of opportunities. It was still early in the game, early in the days, and I guess I was a bit early for my time, but I could totally see. First of all, obviously tourism was already booming, but I could totally see the one day with technology, a lot of people would just be moving there or go there just to enjoy better weather, a more relaxed lifestyle, a much lower cost of living. What if you could get an American salary with a Mexican cost of living? I mean, how better can it be? So I figured out that was going to happen one day, and so I saw there was a huge opportunity there. And I was still relatively early, so these were basically the main reasons. And I had I forgot an important point. Through the business I was doing there, I had connections, which actually was one of the most important things, because it gave me access to special deals, and that's how I started. So so it was a few factors combined.
Yeah, so the proximity of leapfrogging America, the U.S., and having some connections, and just a lower barrier to entry, sort of being a blank canvas that you saw. But in I think you've mentioned in what I've read, challenges associated with purchasing properties, sort of like lack of financing, pre-construction risks. Can you elaborate, like, any challenges in property development projects, and what sort of innovations or insights that you would bring to the table or have brought to the table?
Actually, it's buying property in Mexico is not that exotic for Americans. I mean, plenty of people do it and have done it for a long time. The thing is, the better deals are pre-construction, because obviously, whether if you're an investor or even a lifestyle buyer, what will make a huge difference in the return you make is how much you pay, and especially so if you don't use financing, or even if you do. And you can actually get a much lower price if you buy pre-construction. But so a lot of people do it. Now, and then you get a brand new property, by the way, too.
Okay.
Which doesn't hurt. But the thing is, and sometimes people don't realize, there are actually substantial risks associated with that. And for that reason, a lot of people will never do it. Because basically the way it works, it's not like in the US or Canada where you put 5% down and then you pay the rest upon delivery. Here, basically, you have to pay most, if not all of it, before it gets delivered to you. Yeah. So the main risks that are associated with that, of course, is the developer. If the developer is dishonest, he might disappear, go to South America with your money. Or he might buy a Ferrari with it, and this is actually not a joke. That
happened. Oh my gosh.
Yes. So that's number one. Now, assuming he's honest, then actually because hopefully the majority are, but then the more important issue with the developer risk is that the fact that, so basically the way it happens is you have to pay over time, and they use your money to do the construction. What happens is that, let's say you're the first buyer, one of the first buyers, so you sign your contract, you put it on payment, you give them some money, and as soon as you give them some money, they're going to start construction. As soon as they have enough, because they want to obviously maximize their returns, do it ASAP, so that they can then do the next one, right? Then the problem occurs when they do that, and then they stop selling. They can't sell anymore. They've sold the number they could sell, and then, there's too much competition, the market drop, whatever, there's no guarantee they will sell, right? And if that happens, they just go bankrupt, and basically you lose your money that you have advanced, right? So the developer is very important, not only who they are, but how they handle this. So then I'll get to the financing in a sec, but the way that I handle this, and I think everybody should do that, but they don't. Well, let's say, first of all, the developer and the reputation thereof. So generally, obviously, I will deal with people who know and trust me. So basically, they don't have to trust. For all intents and purposes, I'm the developer, so they don't have to deal with somebody else. Now, of course, it could be friends and family, or it could be even people who listen to these podcasts. But then, personally, ethics and morals and reputation are at the top of my values. But people who don't know me well, they're not supposed to know. So I had the situations, like, for example, there's somebody on Bigger Pockets who had apparently followed me, right, for a while, and then he reached out to me, and then we had a conversation. And then he asked me, he said, so I don't remember the exact words he used, but candidly, he asked me, so how do I know you're not a crook or something? and then my answer was, good question, right, which you should be asking. But then I said, let me ask you another question. Is that you can see that, I've been on Bigger Pockets for years, with hundreds of posts helping people, like, well argumented posts and conversation. Do you realize how much time that takes? Do you think a crook would do that?
Putting yourself out there,
No, but you think a crook would for 5 years, put some, do all this work in the hope that they can,
It makes no sense.
So so that's that, obviously. But of course, if it's not me, you have to figure out, right? You have to kind of investigate the developer. But then, even if it's me, I don't think people should blindly trust me with their money, whoever they are, by the way. So what can be done to that, what I do, is that instead of paying me, basically they pay whatever they owe me in an escrow account. That's controlled by a third party, like the professional companies, well established. Actually, the money is even outside of Mexico. And so for me to access that money, I have to prove that I have reached milestone in the project, in the construction, or I might have to present an invoice. Mm-hmm. I need to pay for this. Can I get the money, please? So I cannot just get the money and buy a Ferrari, right? Yeah. But sadly, they don't do it because, first of all, the buyers don't know that exists, or they can do that, so they don't request it. And of course, it's a hassle. But it builds confidence. And, of course, if somebody tells you, oh, no, I trust you, I don't need it, I say, okay, good. But so we can do that. And then, most importantly, to deal with the risk of bankruptcy, basically the way, I work is that, I have like databases of people have reached out to me. They say, oh, I would be interested in buying something in Cabo or in Vallarta. And so whenever I have a certain number of people in my list, I say, oh, there's enough people to do a project. So then I can create a project specifically for them whereby the project is already sold. The buyer's already there. So there's no risk of I can't sell anymore, so I will go bankrupt. So basically, the idea is that before the buyer puts any money on the line, even to the escrow account, they already know that the whole thing is sold. And then the financing part, so that's another issue. So actually, I benefited from it. And it makes a huge difference. So you don't need, the good thing about Mexico is that because if you buy the right property at the right place and do the right thing with it, you can get actually higher returns than you would get in the US if you use a mortgage, believe it or not. Of course, that's not everybody and not the majority, but right. But even if you don't get the perfect property that makes the most money, you can still get great returns even if you invest 100% in cash, because the cost, the properties are much cheaper, and if you do short-term rentals, you can make almost as much money, if not more, right? Mm. And the costs are much lower. But then, if you get the chance to leverage somewhat, you can even boost your return substantially. Plus, also, some people, they might not bother buying with cash, but they might just, not everybody has the cash lining on their bank account, right? A few $100,000 or whatever it takes, right? Mm-hmm. But financing becomes, there are some products are coming to the market, but still it's very expensive, very difficult. So getting a normal mortgage from a bank in Mexico. So as an alternative, so I got developer financing. So basically I had to pay a certain amount, a certain percentage, let's say half, and then the developer said me, okay, give you a few years to pay the rest. If you do that and you have the right property and you rent it, the cash flow you're going to get is going to pay for the remaining 50%, so it doesn't have to come out of your pocket.
Okay. That
was a very advantageous. Unfortunately, because the word is out more and more out about Mexico, the developers oftentimes can't do it. They don't have the finances that allow them to do that, or they don't want to do it, or they don't have to, because they sell without it. And again, it's not common, so people are not requesting that from them. So it was not very common already, and then it tended to disappear. So basically, I'm trying to reintroducing it. Mm-hmm. So wherever I can, is that I would offer that to buyers, which would make a huge difference to them.
Right. So that's sort of how you're helping these people that you meet, whether it's online or, at different functions. That's sort of how you help these buyers looking to make these international real estate, investments, transactions, whatever it might be. You can also tailor things to their needs. If they say, like you mentioned, Cabo or Vallarta, I think you said, you can find a specific project. You already have the buyer in place to make that happen for whatever their end goal is.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm, one thing I love to do one day is, I think what really, really cool is, having let's say, imagine you have a group of friends from childhood or whatever, or current friends. I mean, how cool would it be? Like you're in Los Angeles, so you can get to Cabo in 2.5 hours. So, for example, how cool will it be that you have a little development? It's only you and your friends. You each of them, you have a house or a condo, and so either you go together, you might even do events there together, or whenever you go, you will bump into somebody you know, and there's when you rent them, and then you can build exactly what people want. Because so I would think it would be super cool to do that for people, because the all these, they do, I mean, they have fantastic architecture, they do great projects, but they're all cookie cutter, right?
Yeah.
It's, you take it or leave it as it is, whereby I much rather give, if for example, I'll start from the buyer, like let's say I have X amount of buyers, whether they're friends or not, actually that it doesn't matter. Then I can ask them, okay, do you want a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, what orientation? And I can try to organize the whole thing that they get what they want. Or then say, oh, you have to have you know what I mean? Rather than you have, oh, it's like this and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, you can customize the experience for them versus like, hey, here are the floor plans, whatever it is. You have to pick from these prefab or whatever, they've set in place for this project.
Yes. And and what happened with the financing bit is that, so I constantly had people ask me for help, and I can give them the recipe, and oh, if I were you, I would do this, or you could do this or that. But then sometimes it came, oh, the problem is what you say is great, but I just don't have the cash lying around. And so then I ask myself, okay, how can I help these people to get around that problem? And that's where the idea of the development came, because I said, well, if I organize the development for them, then I can give them finance.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, because that was sort of what I was going to ask you about. You mentioned the lack of trustworthy individuals you could run into. These people that may be out there trying to be nefarious, that you've experienced firsthand. And others, you can offer that sort of protection in a way to shield them from those experiences. And it sounds like you've set up, ways to sort of impact their end goal, like I mentioned, to ensure that when they invest alongside you, that you're doing everything to make them feel as comfortable as possible, which is important because in things that I've done in the past too, it's like, okay, it's all stateside, but you never know when you're wiring money to some contractor. Yeah, maybe your property manager said, oh, he's a good guy, but you don't know him. You've never met him. You've never, right? You're taking a big leap of faith that he's going to be, hey, if he has to pull permits, he's pulling permits. Whatever the situation calls for, he's doing the right thing. And that's not always the case. So my question leading into that was, when it comes to like local cultures, like even legal systems, market dynamics, which might be a lot different than they are in North America, like sort of how do you navigate those aspects to try to aid in a successful investment?
So I'm putting myself in the shoes of, any investor there. There's two ways you can do it. And it is, are you going to go the do-it-yourself route, or are you going to do it with other people? Because if you go the do-it-yourself route, yeah, you better, obviously you're going to hire a lawyer, but you have to make sure you have a good lawyer. Ideally you would control and understand what he does. So there are obviously, ideally, in ideal world, you should familiarize yourself with the legal system. If you do everything yourself, you have to know how to get along with the locals, to adapt to the local culture so that you can get things done. Now, if you don't have the time, the knowledge, or the inclination to that, and let's face it, most people don't, it depends what you do. Many people, they just buy a condo and they don't ask themselves any questions. Most of the time they get lucky, there's no issue, and that's it. And they bought and they know nothing, But if you want to avoid issues, if you're a serious investor, want to control risks, it's better to know what you're doing, or then you work with people who know what they're doing and who know what you don't know and who can do things you can't do, right? And I guess that's the advantage, and that's the reason why people, since I started, have invested with me, because basically I was doing all the work and I had all the knowledge. So basically they counted on me, and then they didn't need to know all these things or do all this work. So that's, that's an alternative. So it depends on the scenario that you want to follow. And you can decide, I'm going to do, depending on if you say, I want to do multiple investments in the future, you can start doing something with somebody else and then do it on your own if you think you can later on, right?
Yeah, like be the apprentice, pick up everything you can, like in any industry, and then hey, if you ever feel it's time to go off on your own, hopefully you're armed with enough knowledge and experience that you can continue that on your by yourself.
But otherwise, it's a question you have to find and hire the right people. If you do pre-construction, have the right developer. Mind you, if you buy a resale, you still need to make sure it's a good property. Yeah, so there's for everybody. From the person who doesn't want to know and do anything to the person who wants to be very involved. Ultimately, there's different degrees.
Yeah, be as hands-on as you want, and and like we talked offline. I mean, that kind of into my next question of like how the world of Mexico contrasts with that of Europe, somewhere I'm interested personally. How does sort of the experiences there when you're buying, and there's sort of unique opportunities and challenges you've encountered in Europe versus in Mexico? Are they similar or vastly different?
A lot of things are similar, because ultimately real estate is real estate. Most of it, I would assume, would be short-term rentals. That's the same concept everywhere. But of course, there are local differences. I mean, obviously the main differences would be the market and the profitability you can get, right? But apart from that, I would say, and as a general remarks, if you compare, for example, Mexico with Europe, and you were talking to me about Italy, which would be kind of, could put it in the same category as Spain and Portugal, because it's different from Northern Europe, right? Mm-hmm. Which are touristic areas that attract a lot of tourism. You could say that if you don't use leverage, it's more profitable in Mexico. However, in Europe, you could potentially more easily get bank loans at better conditions than you could get in Mexico, which could compensate for that fully or partly. Other differences, again, depending on how much you are involved. Let's say something happens to the property. For us, it's much easier to jump on a plane,
proximity,
and go to Mexico than, especially for you actually, than go to Europe, right?
Sure.
Imagine there is a little problem and you have to spend $3,000 on a flight to Europe,
Yeah.
So that would be, but there's a lot of people buying in both areas. They're similar, and actually it's very interesting because there's obviously traditionally Americans, Canadians buy a lot in Mexico, and then Northern Europeans buy a lot in Southern Europe. But now you have actually cross currents. Like there's more and more, like you would find more and more Americans, Canadians in Spain and Portugal and buying there, and more Europeans buying in Mexico, interestingly enough. Because for many places, it's actually not that complicated to get there. And nowadays, if you go for longer than a weekend, it's always worth it. But yeah, those would be main. Obviously, legal systems are different in these things. But as far as I'm concerned, it's about replicating and there's also the question of contacts, right? It's a good thing, have the right, it makes a huge difference whether you have the right contacts or you're done.
Yeah, you're the boots on the ground. Yeah, and it seems like there's a lot of people in Europe, at least that I've read. You've said, I believe, as well online, variable rates. You're seeing a lot in Europe. I'm not sure if that's the same in Mexico, but you do see a lot of the variable mortgages going on in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, in Mexico, yeah, because the 30-year mortgage, that exists actually in other countries, but it's generally it's a US. In Canada, we can't get that.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends in Toronto.
In Mexico, actually, you can get both, but in Mexico, because of the variability doesn't make too much of a difference because the rate is high. But yeah, in Europe, it can make a difference, and I know certain situations where actually foreigners cannot get a fixed rate.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the situation. But yeah, variable rates are much more common. That's what I have, and it can be a good or a bad thing.
Right.
But yeah, because there was a conversation I was mentioning because the rates are lower in Europe versus the US. But by the way, the rates are lower in Canada too. But that's because they're short term, and they're variable. So So I will illustrate the difference with a concrete example in Canada, because this is exactly what's going on here. We had, like you guys, we had very, very low rates 2 years ago. So a lot of people bought for super low rates, but your 2 or more. But so your rates are fixed for 30 years. So most of our rates are like for 3 years. So some people now are starting to have their mortgage payments double.
Wow.
So you have to be careful with these things. So it was an advantage because I got a mortgage that's 145%, but today it's like 7 or something. I don't. No, yeah. So I mean, I'm exaggerating, but
yeah, it shot up. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so you have to be aware of that.
Of course, and more of a broad question, like, are there sort of like, I know everyone will ask on forums and on, other shows and stuff, like, what are the next hot spots that people are seeing, or, or even like emerging trends? Like, are there any new regions that you personally, or types of properties that you're finding, promising for future investments for yourself or for clients of yours that maybe people are just sort of starting to figure out?
Well, assuming you're looking at a pure investment, what I tell people is that nobody has a crystal ball. So neither them nor me can guess what the next hotspot would be. Now, if you bought land in the Riviera Maya 40 years ago, you're a billionaire today, right?
Yeah.
But, it was part luck. Like, you wouldn't know what was going to happen. Because it went from 0 to hero, right?
Right.
But so if you can it's very tempting to buy today for a song in the next upcoming destination, and all of a sudden, whatever land you might have bought is going to be worth a fortune. But most often than not, it does not happen. Sure. So it's kind of a bit of a lottery. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, if you like to play the lottery, it exists, sure, or you might do it with a speculative part of your portfolio. But, my advice to people is to stick to the tried and true, but the ones that still have a runway, places that still have a runway ahead of them. And before I get to that, just to give you an example, I know some people have been promoting Nicaragua for the last 20 years. It was going to become the next Costa Rica. Guess what? It never happened. And actually, it's gone worse. The situation got worse. I know people, they bought I don't know, an example, somebody bought a house for 800,000, had to sell it for not even 300 to get rid of it after 20 years. What a great investment that is. So don't speculate. There are places that it's very clear that they're on the up. They're very popular, but it's still early days, even though they've been there for a while. And that's what I'm doing. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. So I come back to, we were talking about Mexico, places like Cabo, Vallarta, Riviera Nayarit, the whole Baja California Sur for you guys. It's incredible the way it's growing. There's more and more people are going there. There's no reason why it would stop anytime soon, it seems. So it's better to focus on those areas. And they are unique because the location you cannot. So if you look at Mexico, for example, you cannot, when it comes to remote working, there is no competition. They're in the right time zone. They're just below the US. Anywhere you have to go, it's more complicated, it takes more time. You cannot go back and forth that easily. So you know that it's always going to be like that, right? Unless you put some artificial island in the, of Los Angeles or something.
Yeah.
So look at Europe, it's the same story. Who has the best climate? The lower cost of living is always going to be sort of Spain, Portugal, or Italy that you went to. That's never going to change. So that limits the risk hugely. Maybe some country in Africa one day is going to be a success story in terms of tourism, but who knows?
Yeah. Crystal ball.
There is money to be made in those places. So, unless you're the very adventurous type. Of course, if you have a contact in Nigeria, you could decide go do something there. But
sure. Probably, yeah, I don't. But so would you say throughout your career here in real estate that you have a personal philosophy or guiding principle when it just comes to your own investments, not just for other people? Especially on an international scale, is there a philosophy you stick by, and has that ever evolved over your career?
Well, I'd say if there was anything, I would say it's something that I apply, and actually not only to real estate. Before real estate, I was also investing, in the stock market. I still am, and so I borrowed a saying or a philosophy from there, which says there's always a bull market somewhere. So for those who are not familiar with the stock market jargon, a bull market means a market that goes up, right? And that's I think the advantage of international real estate and looking at it at the international level. Because a lot of people basically, and I totally understand, they say it's riskier, so I want to invest only in my home country. The only thing is, first of all, it goes against the principle of diversification. Basically, you're at the mercy of your government, whether you like it or not. But these are other considerations. But think about today's situation in the real estate market, and which you're a realtor yourself, right? So you know this better than me. And we are in the US and Canada, we are in exactly the same situation where prices are very high and money is not free anymore. And we have to contend with very high mortgage rates. So most investments don't work anymore. And as far as you can tell today, there is no reason why that would change anytime soon. So what do you do? And of course, there's always opportunities like that they teach you in the podcast. There are, on Bigger Pockets, people find them all the time. But there's a hordes of investor and there's a few deals. And, and it's always probably going to be the same people who are going to get them. But so you can get them, but you cannot count like years ago when money was free, right? And you could buy anything and it would, increase in value and you would be cash flow positive. So, but there are other countries in the world, there are other parts of the world where it's different. So either you can do cash, or the mortgage rates are not that high, or this or that, or it's cheap. The market is the market is not oversaturated yet. There's always opportunity somewhere, and the job of people like us is to find them for us and others. And of course, it's easier said than done. But that's why, being connected with the right people and all these websites like Bigger Pockets are also useful, right? You can get ideas, inspiration, information. It's very interesting because I mean, it's actually I'm just reflecting on this as I speak to you. But I've been posting on Bigger Pockets about Mexico for, I guess, the last, I would say 5-6 years or something like that. At the beginning, I got actually quite a bit of sometimes vitriol telling me I was crazy, it made no sense, it's very risky, you're going to get killed by the cartel, this and that. And I must still get that, but it's much less and less. And there's more people realize, I guess it's because of the pandemic, or everybody who wanted to escape the restrictions make their way to Mexico and realize it's not that horrible country after.
Yeah.
And so, nowadays it's almost reverse. I get there's positive message, comments and message. So it makes it's just a question of knowing what's going on and perception. Before people went there, they had no idea. They only read they only read the murder stories that they're being told about on TV, and that was the only thing.
Yeah.
That they knew about.
Yeah.
Right? It's very interesting. So your perspective of a country is going to be very different whether you have been or not, whether you know people, you know what's going on. So if you care to look, you can still find opportunities to put your money to work somewhere.
Right. So your philosophy is almost like there might be less deals, but there's always going to be deals. And if you're going to venture out of your comfort zone or your own country, hey, get out there, see the place in person, walk around, get to know the culture. A great friend of mine and his wife just came back from Mexico City a couple of months ago. They loved it. I know a lot of Americans are moving down there recently. Rents are going up because, right, you're taking the American salary, bringing it down there, sort of like you alluded to in the beginning. So it's sort of immersing yourself a bit before you sort of pass judgment on maybe some clickbait article you read that was politically driven in some way that has nothing to do with 99% of the rest of the place.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And and actually that's another play in this. Actually, it's the same sort of people you meet there. Actually, whether you're in Southern Europe or especially like in the people who go there and invest and live and move there. And actually, there's a lot of there's a new market for these places. All the Americans are fed up with the politics, and they just want to get out.
Yeah. No, I get it.
And not hear about it anymore.
Yeah, just kind of.
So whichever side you're on, right? It doesn't matter. Actually,
no, it doesn't, right? Just you want to enjoy your life,
Yeah. So there's it's interesting. So it opens your perspective. Sometimes you just do it as an investment, and then you discover, actually I might move there.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to buy a second property so I can use that one as an investment and one for myself,
Yeah. Oh, well, like your idea about having, a group of friends, just kind of like, let's customize exactly what we want down wherever and go in as partners and we can go down there and enjoy it together, your families,
Yeah. And I think that's a great opportunity because the problem is you have to, obviously, it's a great idea, but then somebody has to do it, right? So
yeah, it's got to be funded, right?
So and obviously, and generally, obviously, developers, they do things for themselves and they want like big buildings but there is so much. There is so much opportunity, and it's a question of the right time, being at the right time at the right place. But again, there are places that, these places we are talking about, I don't know if there's a word in English. In French, we say valeur sûre. It's like like almost the same you say for good. It's a store of value, because you know there will always be people who want to go and live there, and ultimately there's not enough land for all those people. So that's almost a guarantee that you're probably going to hold its value at the bare minimum or increase in value, and then people who can't buy, but they're going to have to rent. And these places you were talking about, actually you were talking about Italy. Now, I personally, as an investment, I love Italy and the food. As an investment, I prefer Spain and Portugal. It's much friendlier, it's much less risky, and also Italy has issues. And the average the average real estate price in Italy, mind you, up to the pandemic, they had been going down for the 15 years preceding. Can you be when the rest of the world was going up like crazy, like Italy was going down? No, that's changed. And so I was very surprised, but I recently wrote that apparently it's the third destination where the wealthy and super wealthy are buying property. They'll buy in selective places, of course, like the Lake of Como, or that's kind of but it's something. And then basically they say they love the lifestyle there, tranquility. Yeah, but very few people know that.
Yeah, no, we had a great time. I mean, it's very it's sort of the antithesis of America, where here you live to work, there they work to live. It's just a different mindset. And I've never been to Portugal, never been to Spain. I'm sure they're just as exciting and sort of rewarding for people who are used to these sort of fast-paced work first lifestyles that we've been living forever here.
Some Californians say it's California without the traffic, and probably you can say it's California without the traffic and the taxes and.
So where can people learn more about you? I know you're on Bigger Pockets, and I'll make sure that that's in the show notes. But is there any other platforms that you use, or are you most active there?
Well, the thing is, I haven't been very active on social media. It's just a question of time and priority. I got a Bigger Pockets because I went there to learn first, and I realized I could help people, in a format, even though it takes time, it's easy. So I should definitely, if I want to help more people, at some point I should get into all the social media stuff and doing maybe what you do. But I have not yet. So basically, that's mainly where I share what I'm doing and where I help people. So that's the easiest way to find me. And then you can basically, if you go to biggerpockets.com, if you put my name in the search engine, you would bump into me. I did the test. So, and alternatively, you can just send me a personal email at my Gmail address. So I think that these are, what the easiest way. And speaking, by the way, that's very funny. I get quite a lot of messages from Bigger Pockets, direct messages from members that, have absolutely no picture, no information whatsoever. And then, because I always, before answering a question they have, I said, okay, I'll try to know what I can know about them to try to give them proper advice if that's what's needed. So I checked their profile, and there's absolutely nothing. But I realized they just joined the same day. And what I realized is happening is, and especially it happens where, for example, if there is a post and I'm part of that, and there's a lot of activity in that thread, I'll get this message because people then they Google things like Mexico, Tulum, Playa del Carmen, investing in Mexico, and then through a Google search, they bump into my Bigger Pockets profile or to a thread where I was commenting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you should get out there. You'd have some very good content with all your travels too, I think, for social media, which would be very cool to see. I would love to see it. And, to be completely honest, like this podcast was very selfish of me because I was like really want to learn myself and talk to you offline about this. So for me, it was very informative and informational that I can run with and talk with you again offline about how to dive more into this. So I definitely appreciate all the time you took today. I know you're traveling a lot, but this was much appreciated. And I would like I say to everyone, I would love to do this again in the future, and check in from time to time. If you ever start one, continue to help each other out. But again, thank you so much for your time today. I will make sure that all of your email and your link on Bigger Pockets is in the notes, and that's where people can connect with you. I highly think they should to learn more, like I did, and hopefully everyone else did.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. And yeah, I hope it was of interest to your audience. And I try to help as much as I can. So, don't hesitate to contact me if there's anything you think I can help with.
Yeah, it's all adding value. Adding value, I think, is the best way to help people, and that's certainly what you did on this talk. So, thank you again for all the time today. And everyone should reach out to you. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk. We'll do this again soon.
Thank you. Likewise.